What's good, y'all? We back at it again with another video. So it's currently 6:29 p.m. on November 1st. I had a whole vlog basically made already. I did my pre-market analysis. I did my trading. I did my workout and showed a couple other things, and somehow I deleted it all. So today's video is going to be really just my pre-market analysis, and then I'll do my, not even a pre-market analysis. I'll just show my trade for the day, go through my thought process with it, and then I'll go on to chapter 7 of my book, which talks about how the church is implicit in the use of this corrupt money that we have. So I'll give y'all a breakdown of that, and that's really it, because yeah, all the other content I had is deleted somehow. So I hope you enjoy the video, and yeah, let's get to it. All right, what's good, y'all? So let's do this post-market recap. Today is November 1st. You can see down here 7:18 p.m. So the market is closed. And if you watched the video yesterday, you saw I took a $500 withdrawal from the account. So the account was back at $1,000 to start the day. And as you can see over here, it's now at $900. So yes, I did take a loss on the day. It was a good loss because it was a part of my system. There were some things that I saw before checking the trade that signaled that this may be a loser before I got in. So let's get into that. You can see I lost $100.50. And the date right here is 11/1, November 1st. So let's get into the actual trade. So starting on the 4-hour chart, coming into the day. Don't start glitching on me, please. So coming to the day, I'm gonna get rid of. No, I'm gonna just explain that a little bit later. So coming into the day, I wanted price to come into this 4-hour order block up here before looking to get in the trade. Once we did, I came down to the 1-hour. I saw the 1-hour was bullish, so I know that we could. Sales might have a tough time, selling off if the hourly and the 4-hour on the line. So I saw we had this really like artificially clean move, and normally when I see this, I'm like, yeah, this is manipulated, and I usually expect a pullback, and you can see we got one. So I come down to the 5-minute to get my steps, and then so we come in to this is the 8:30 candle right here. This is the New York market open. We come into the box. I get my first break of structure right here. You can see that we broke this low. So that was my first break of structure. And then I wanted a liquidity grab. And the liquidity grab is just a break of if I'm looking for shorts for sales, I want a break of a high. If I'm looking for buys, I want a break of a low. So we broke a high up here. And then we also had a 5-minute order block tap right there. And I'm actually going to look into taking entries at the 5-minute order block rather than waiting for the second break of structure. Because as you can see, if I entered up here, massive gains, but I ended up entering on the second break of structure down here once we broke this low. And so at this point, right before entering, I saw that we had this massive candle down towards my entry. And something that I've been noticing, but I don't have the data to back it right now, is that whenever we have a strong move towards my entry, so for this instance, I was in sales. We had a strong sell, strong move downward toward my entry. And as you can see, the market moves in phases. Let me see if I can find this tool right quick. So the market moves in impulse correction, and then vice versa to the downside. So for the downside, we move like this. And we got at this point, we had already got the impulsive move. So I'm thinking, yeah, there's a high probability based off of knowing how the market moves and based off of just how this strategy has been working. There's a high chance that this trade will not work out, or if it does, it'll hit my 1-to-1 and then turn around. So but I don't have the data to back it, so I still have to execute on it. And this is this trade I took a loss. So I entered here, we made a move down, strong move up. At this point, I was about $50 in drawdown, so half of my risk. And we just chopped for a little minute, and then we ended up coming down. And at this point, I really thought that I was at least going to hit 1-to-1, and it came 9 points above and turned around and stopped me out just for it to come back down, back to the 1-to-1 at the end of the day. So this is something that I'm going to back test for sure and just look back through my data and see how many times this happens and what's the probability of the trade working out if I do have this large move down towards my entry, because it's something that I've been noticing and it's been catching my eye. And I'm also going to back test entering at the 4-hour order block, the 5-minute order block tap once we sweep liquidity, just to get a better entry. So those are some things that I'm going to look into this weekend. Those are things I'm going to be back testing and spend some time on the charts tomorrow. And also in this trade, something that I was looking at as well is on the hourly chart. I took this gun box from the bottom of from the most recent low to the most recent high up here, and once we were pulling back, damn, where'd it go? Once we were pulling back, I know that the 50% level on this box, on the ranges, are usually strong levels, and as you can see, we bounced right at the 50% level. And I saw this in real time, and I'm like, damn, bro, I'm probably gonna lose. So I just let it play out, and I end up taking a loss. All good. This just makes me want to do the research and do the data and actually get the actual statistics behind this setup, because what I'm realizing, I've been trying to develop a system to where I enter half size, full size, and whatnot, and I'm trying to figure out when to do one or the other. And I'm realizing that my system is my system. How I enter a trade is how I enter the trade, but there are different types of setups, different quality setups within that system. And now, like today was one of them days where I was like, okay, yeah, I've seen this setup happen a couple times, so I'm going to backtest it now and see the probability of me winning with this particular setup. So that's really it. Don't want to yap about too much. Now let's get into the recap of chapter 7 of Thank God for Bitcoin. I decided that I'm going to start doing my book reviews on completely separate videos, just so I can go, fully into depth with the books, and I don't have to feel like I'm rushed to fit, so much stuff into the vlog, because that's kind of what has been happening. But like I said, this is a new channel, so I'm learning. Y'all are watching me grow. So I'm deciding to do my book breakdowns as completely separate videos. So chapter 7 talks about how bad money corrupts the church, and the first thing he talks about is how many churches are in debt, usually because of mortgages they've taken out on their big, beautiful buildings. So if you guys didn't know, churches are businesses at the end of the day. Yeah, they say they're non-profit organizations, but they do require money in order to function. So he talks about how mortgages are usually paid out from the church's future revenue. And just like anybody else that wants to go to the bank and get a loan, you have to have something to show for it. You have to have, bank statements. You have to show that you have a steady income of money. And no different with the church. And this was eye-opening because it made me think about my experience coming up with church and with tithing and giving money and all that. So banks evaluate church revenues through pledges and offering receipts for receiving loan approvals. So in order for a church to get approved for a loan, they have to have some type of proof that they're bringing in income. And the way the church is bringing income is by offerings and tithings. So they provide their offering and tithing receipts to the banks, and then the banks, determine whether or not they are going to get approved for the loan. So even churches aren't excused from this system that we're in, and all the things that come with the money that we use. So churches are pressured to keep as many tithing congregants as possible. So they face a pressure from the banks. They face a pressure from this mortgage, just like the average person does with their mortgage. Once you get the mortgage, you're now over this certain time period, 30, 15, whatever. You are obligated to pay this note every month, and you're going to sacrifice your time and energy in order to pay it. And the thing is with the churches is they have to do the same thing, but they're just going to get the money from the people that are sacrificing their tithings. They're sacrificing their time and energy. So this kind of turns the church. Now you can see where the church turns into more of a business, because now it's incentivized to what? To make more money. It's incentivized to keep people in the church. So they begin to rent the churches out. Some churches aren't just a church. Some churches are just they may own the building, but you may see different events happening in the church and whatnot, and that's to basically get more revenue. That's to pay the bills. And a lot of times those events happening in churches have nothing to do with spreading the gospel. And from this author's standpoint, that is immoral, and that's against God and His teaching. So the churches end up becoming debt slaves to the banks and to the state, just like normal people do. And that's this whole point of this chapter, just showing how churches are implicit in this whole thing that we have going on as well. The whole bad money system that we have. He says they begin to rent the churches out for more revenue and selling some of the real estate, functioning more like landlords on behalf of the banks they owe debt to. Basically becoming slaves to the banks, slaves to debt, no different than the average consumer. So he says they become more focused on debt service instead of ministry, becoming slaves to their lenders. Intentions are not good enough. Debt has paved a path of unrighteous practice that have little or nothing to do with spreading the gospel. And what he's referring to is when a lot of churches that rent out their space to other things to go on, they're doing that in order to get more money, in order to pay their debts. And a lot of the times the things that are going on in the church have nothing to do with spreading the gospel. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going against the gospel, but it has nothing to do with spreading the gospel. And he's saying that is an unrighteous practice. So he then goes on to talk about how a lot of churches are starting to look like country clubs. And I started to think about a church that I used to go to when I was a little younger. And it was pretty big. It had multiple buildings. It was really nice. It looked like a campus. And it had a lot of different stuff. It had like coffee shops and real nice coffee shops in it, and multiple floors and all this like playgrounds, all the different type of stuff. And he says some churches establish a budget based on what will attract the most people instead of what will honor God. So yeah, this starts to make sense because I think about the mega churches that there are and how they're all under one umbrella. And I've always questioned it. I've always questioned it, like, how are they affording these gigantic buildings and these gigantic pieces of land? And because they're running them like businesses. They're running them like real businesses. And he says that this leads to some pastors to preach in a way that appeals to the most people possible with popular topics like spiritual gifts, dealing with loneliness, and parenting techniques. So basically what he's saying is, because the churches have to rake in money in order to pay the mortgage, to pay the bank, then they have to keep the people in the church. And in order to keep the people in the church, they have to, like, why would they teach them about how the money works? Why would the church teach the congregation about how the money that we use really works if they have to pay the bank with the money? It's like if they told the people of the congregation, okay, the money that we use is corrupt, the money is immoral, and we shouldn't use it. It's like nobody would tithe. They wouldn't be able to pay for the building. So it has them in like the bad money system has even the churches in the chokehold in multiple different ways, which he goes on to talk about. So he says, it keeps the pastors from talking about, what they really want to talk about a lot of times, because what the government is doing a lot of the time is going against the way that God is teaching them to be within the church. So he says, in some ways, churches imitate our political system. And what he means by that is politicians are going to tell you what you want to hear in order to get your vote. And a lot of the times, pastors operate in the same way because it's a business at the end of the day. If the preacher isn't keeping people in the congregation, you might swap them out. So you might see different pastors at a bunch of different churches. Who knows? But something to think about for sure. He also says sometimes truth and popularity will coincide, but more often the gospel gets watered down and contaminated. So what he's saying is a lot of pastors pick certain things from the Bible to teach the people and don't teach the whole truth about what it says about everything. And one of those main things is the money, because like I said, why would a lion teach the sheep how to get away? So he talks about the phrase of the world, and what he means by that is to share the world's priorities, methods, and goals. He says God's ways and the world's ways oftentimes don't align with each other, and I agree with that. He says money is a tool to make the church of the world. How is that, you may ask? So the government gives churches different benefits, if you didn't know. Like if you don't, like zoning, there's a thing called zoning to where you can't just build a commercial building, a store in certain areas, and you can't build a house in certain areas. There's zoning laws. Well, a lot of the times churches are exempt from these zoning laws, and they get different tax benefits. The donations that they get they can be written off on their taxes, and this gives them an advantage. They're with their revenue. And one example of these benefits is the PPP loan. Yeah, you would think that only the average citizen got that loan, but yeah, churches got that too. The federal government gave out $7.3 billion in PPP to churches in 2020. So yeah, we got money, bro. The country has money. It's just, where do they want to put it? He says these benefits come at a cost though. There's no such thing as a free lunch. No such thing as a free lunch. So they got that $7.3 billion from the government, but it costs them something. And they get these tax exemptions from the government, but it costs them something. And what's the price that they pay for it? The price that they pay is on a much, much deeper level. So they don't necessarily pay, yeah, they pay in money, but they pay more in their obedience and their compliance to the government's mandates. For example, when COVID happened, most churches most churches allowed the government to come in and just give out the vaccines. No, I didn't see one church that was against the vaccine and spoke up against the government trying to whatever. Every church just went with it. And it's his point that he's making is that most churches, like almost no church, is going to speak out against any government mandate. Like they wouldn't dare to, because they get so much benefits from it. But they pay for it in their compliance. He says many churches helpfully comply with government mandates because of their reliance on government handouts. They won't dare criticize the local governments. The line between Caesar and God becomes blurred, and the obedience to God gets intermingled with the obedience to the state. Man, this is deep. This is deep, man. This is real deep. He says churches become indistinguishable from any other organization doing the bidding of the state, not God. Because when you're paying off a mortgage, it's with money. You're paying interest on that money, and you're only paying interest because the government is paying interest to the central bank. So you're really doing the government's bidding by paying this mortgage. At the same time, most churches have the intention of doing God's bidding by bringing God's people together and helping to save people and all that good stuff. But at the same time, you're participating in the degradation of the community by using this corrupt money, this immoral money, this bad money. So it's a really good point. It's a really good something to think about. Something to think about for sure. He says he talks about the prosperity gospel. So the prosperity gospel is where the congregants of the church are told that worldly possessions such as material wealth and health are they'll come to them if they are faithful enough, and they show their faith by supporting the church financially. And he's saying that this is a trick. He's saying the worship of money is clothed in the worship of God. The prosperity gospel makes faith transactional. So he's saying, like, okay, with the churches that preach that, all right, is it God that's gonna bring you riches and health, or is it the money? Like, which one? Something to think about. He says indulgences have been rebranded in this modern era. First off, let me say what an indulgence is. So an indulgence was a practice of the Roman Catholic Church in the 12th century, and it was a practice to where they gave things in order to lessen their consequences for their sins. And oftentimes this indulgence came in the form of printed letters, and now that has transformed into the money. He says when playing a game where everyone's cheating, we will be tempted to cheat. If churches don't acknowledge the immorality of debt-based money, they will ultimately participate in it. So that's exactly what's happening. The church is just like everybody else in this big game, using debt-based money, buying more things, buying more real estate, buying more land. And for what? For what? I bet if you did a ratio of asset acquisition versus actual people change and life change and the overall betterment of society, the overall increase of people's joy and happiness in society, if you could even quantify that, I bet it would show something pretty interesting. So he says the church has an opportunity and a responsibility to become increasingly aware of its indulgence in the corrosive fruit of bad money. And that's how he ends the chapter. He's saying that if all the churches stood up and started to preach to his people and share to his people what God says about bad money within the Bible, instead of nitpicking different things to give to his people during the sermons and just recycling the same scriptures. Because I remember, coming up, it was a lot of the same stories. A lot of the same stories. Different preachers would come to the church and say it in a different way, but it was a lot of the same scriptures, the same parables, this big old book, and they're using the same things. And it oftentimes the message would line up with what was going on in the world, really. It would line up with, Easter, Mother's Day, all that stuff. Man, I remember Mother's Day, bro. They used to make, I'm sure some people can relate. They used to make, if you went to my church, they used to make people, or the kids at least, feel like trash on Mother's Day, Father's Day. Like, if you not then you are a bad kid. And, yeah. So yeah, that's how he ends the chapter. And this book is very interesting. This book brings up a lot of good points, makes you really sit back and think about how cash rules everything around me. It really does. In this world that we live in, this society that we live in, it really does. Everybody's a slave to the bank, pretty much. If you have a car note, you're a slave to the bank, or you're a slave to the car, because you have to then spend your time and energy on acquiring these dollars in order to pay off this debt. If you have a mortgage and you don't have a renter in it, then you have to acquire this. You still have to figure out a way to acquire the money in order to pay off this debt. It's like everything we do is revolving around paying off some type of debt. Some type of debt, bro. So, yeah, just something to think about. Hopefully this opens your mind a little bit to what's really going on in the world and how things really operate, how the church operates. If you clicked on this video because you saw church, hopefully you learned something. And the next chapter, chapter 8, is Bitcoin, or more money. So more than half of the book wasn't even about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's in the front of it, but more than half of the book isn't even about Bitcoin. It's really about what money is at its core, what money is and how it functions and how we use money as society, and how the difference between the good money and the bad money. So now, which I'm finally getting to that point, because I'm like, damn, bro, he telling me all this stuff about how the money isn't good and all this bad stuff about money, but my whole life they've been teaching me how to get some money, what to do to get some money, So now he's gonna go into chapter 8 and talk about a better money, a better option, solutions. So that's what I like to hear. And yeah, so if you want to see that, I'll probably post that tomorrow. And bro, I had a vlog today, and as I'm recording this video, my iPhone says my storage is full. So I go to my storage, I start deleting stuff or whatever. Somehow I deleted the whole vlog, and it's deleted out of my recently deleted, so I can't get it back. So this is the video for today. Yeah, ain't no vlog. Hope you got some value from the video today. I am signing out. About to go get some Chipotle and really just kick it on the charts, man. This is my safe space. This is my happy place, my safe space. So I'm finna be on the charts. Probably put on a movie, maybe some football or something, and get into the weekend. I got therapy tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And yeah, so by the time you're watching this, it's nighttime. Hope you had a productive day. I know I did, even though all of it got destroyed, the content of it got destroyed, but still had a productive day nonetheless. And I'll be back probably Sunday with a video. Saturdays, I like to, really just keep them to myself. Unless I feel compelled to make some content and give y'all some game, I will. But I might just chill tomorrow and take a little break and come back Sunday with a refreshed mind, some more insight from my back-tested data that I'm going to look into this weekend. And yeah, that's it for the video. Peace.